out here, that's possible. But good to realize, because if you're talking with other colleagues, maybe here in Indonesia or internationally, you don't know that there are different variations of a PhD project, you might start to talk not in front of each other, but there will be a mismatch in your communication, because you might assume that a dissertation, a PhD project is the same everywhere, which is certainly not the case. So, Paul Thompson, he wrote a very interesting chapter on thesis and dissertation writing. Can you all see this? So, actually, a dissertation is the end product of your PhD project. It shows from the start to the end how your PhD project ended, where it started and how it ended, right? You show your PhD topic, you show what the new elements are, and what you eventually concluded. But there are different ways. You have the most traditional thesis or dissertation is in which your thesis is a book with an introduction, maybe a literature review. In the middle of your dissertation, there's a method section, a results section, discussion section. So it's one big study, a huge study. That's your dissertation. In most psychology faculties, this is not the dissertation that we use. We use often a variation of this, which would be, for example, a more traditional and complex variation in which you conduct separate studies, and each chapter has its own introduction, method, results, discussion. You have different chapters. Maybe you start with a review of a certain topic and you end with a general discussion conclusion. That's what most have, but that's not all. Some have a more topic-based. Some PhD projects don't work on one topic, they work on several related topics. For example, in the area of memory, you might be interested in different types of memory. So one topic could be conscious memory, another topic could be unconscious memory, another topic could be procedural memory, etc. Topic-based. You don't see that a lot also in psychology, but it can happen. This is something that you might not be familiar with, but that's it's called a monograph. You see that often at, for example, law faculties, in which each chapter should follow up with a plausible connection transition to the next chapter. You should tell a very coherent story. And this is very important also for us as psychologists, that if we write a dissertation, that's my personal perspective, that it's not just a collection of research articles. That's what sometimes what's happened as well. You publish a research article maybe on memory, then you publish a second research article again about memory, then you combine everything. That's your dissertation. It doesn't have a coherent story. It's just collecting all of the research articles. But for some, at my faculty, Maastricht University, this last one is used quite often as a dissertation. There is sometimes not a very coherent story to tell. They try, but not often, and they just collect research articles. And I also work at the Faculty of Law and Criminology in the University of Leuven, and then this logical story is very important. It depends on in which university, which faculty you are, on which PhD project dissertation you will do. One way or another, I will show you today, whatever dissertation type you will do, your topic, choosing your topic, creating a PhD proposal is essential. Without it, you will maybe be lost, and you will maybe not know exactly what you are doing. So investing time in your topic, maybe together with your future supervisor, and spending time on writing your proposal is of high relevance. That doesn't mean that this is a fixed proposal. I will show you today this proposal might change, your plans might change, perfectly okay, but it's of essence that you try to think about this. So these are the different types of dissertations that exist in general in the world, right? The monograph types of research articles. So some of you raised your hand, and who was again working on a dissertation or a PhD project at this moment? Okay, one, so maybe like so what type of dissertation?
Proposal,
Yep.
proposals, I think it's more like traditional.
Mm-hmm. So separate studies or? Okay.
But I think, yeah, I'm not sure of but actually I'm still a bit confused with the rule theory in public psychology, because since if I saw last dissertation that my senior have already produced, there are some kind of variations. I've seen the last one also have here, so I think I'm leaning more to the traditional type of the introduction, the review and the methods with each subject
Exactly. Yeah, that I think is what you see maybe most often in psychology. Who was it? You're also raising your hand, right? Could you elaborate on your PhD project or dissertation type? That doesn't mean what I mean which type of dissertation is more. Which doesn't mean that you have to write a dissertation now, but what will be your end product at the end? Could you tell me a little bit? Okay. Yeah. Okay, exactly. Okay, good. Could you repeat again so the others can hear?
I was staying in the hospital for another now. I want to know about what's the local price that someone or have better out when they are being a parent, like childhood trauma, schizophrenia, and total dysfunction.
And you go to a project with different studies.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah. So maybe a general question, maybe is there a policy in your faculty on how the PhD project and dissertation should look like?
Mostly we use the traditional format anyway.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, since the early stage of the PhD students, sometimes they only have one big study, but some of them also have several studies.
Yeah.
So it's kind of not have a specific format for us, but mostly we use the traditional one, the simple and complex traditional.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. I will come back in a bit why it is good to know, and that this relates to publications. Any questions about this or any comments from you about this? No? So, I'm just going to show you an example of some of my PhD, former PhD students and their presentations and to show the differences. So, this is, for example, the first is a collection of research articles, and the second is an example of a monograph. So, all PhD theses start with an introduction, providing a review, and then in that review they identify the gaps of literature. So if you're looking for a topic, you have an interest in a certain area, maybe burnout or maybe trauma, essential issues, of course, read the literature and see are there things missing together with your supervisor that we don't know at this moment. So, for example, this might then lead to your main aim of the PhD, identifying a gap in the research literature. And how to answer these aims, this will guide your process in which studies you will eventually conduct. So that's why it's so important to have a good proposal. Again, that can change, but to invest time in coming up with a good aim will identify also the type of studies you will likely need to conduct. I say likely, that I will do that very often, because your studies might eventually be completely different from what you planned, which is totally okay. But still, if you're just doing random studies because your supervisor tells you, no, let's do this, let's do that, that's not good science. And if you have these supervisors, you could say, well, maybe I just saw this workshop, maybe we should do it differently. a good coherent story is important for science, for the sake of science. Because just doing random studies is also a waste of resources, a waste of money. So rather do a good work, maybe not too much, than do a lot of different things, but low quality, right? So this, for example, is a recent PhD thesis. It was a joint PhD between Maastricht University and a Romanian university of Mara Moldoviano. This one about false beliefs, and this is a collection of research articles, which you can see here. It works. So, I'm not sure if you can see it. The first chapter is a general introduction, and then each chapter is a research article. Most of them also were published. Not that it is important. Well, I will come to that in a bit as well. So this is a collection of research articles, but I will show you now there's another one. This is from the Faculty of Law and Criminology from Leuven University. This is from Charlotte Buchen, who's now a postdoc. This is about false denials. This is a monograph. And a monograph, in the introduction, you don't have to read this, but she came up with this figure, this graph, to show how each chapters are related to each other and are related to the main aim of the thesis. So that if you read it as if you're reading a book, a coherent story, which could contain separate studies, but still each study follows logically up from the previous studies. A monograph. So there is the idea that if you write your dissertation, that some of your chapters or studies should be published. It's important. Publications are important. I can tell you this, no, they're not important. Yeah, to get promotion, to get your PhD, but it's not. So I'm going to tell you the history of our university and of my faculty. In the past, it was the case that if you were a PhD student and had to write your dissertation, that about 3 to 4 chapters should have been published. 3, that's a lot. Right? We get rid of that. We don't need any publications for a dissertation, actually, anymore. It would be great if you have, and if you don't have, it's also okay, as long as your studies are of high methodological quality. So the method is more important than the results. So if you come up with an interesting study and you find something completely different or not significant, that doesn't matter as long as your method is good. Which could mean that your studies are not getting published, but the method is still good, your quality is still good. Why do I say this? Because I will come to that in a bit. Our field of psychological science is a field in which the past years we have noticed that people want to get so many publications, so many positive findings, and if they don't find a significant finding, they will not publish it. So our field is flooded with findings from low quality studies. People rapidly want to do studies and immediately publish it, and then someone wants to replicate it and are unable to replicate it because the first study was of such low quality, not a lot of participants, not good measurement, that it's not replicated. And then what you have is a publication in the scientific field that doesn't mean anything, not a lot. And I can tell you, when some of my studies certainly are of low quality when I was a PhD student, because the emphasis was on publications. The more you will get promotion, the more, and I can now say this as a professor, of course. For you it's difficult because you might have a supervisor or there is an idea you should get publications. And I understand that, but the step before is, okay, if that is the guideline, publications, then the first step is make sure that the methodology of your work is good, is strong. because that will increase your work getting published. Yeah? So that's the essence of that I think is very important to know. So there are these dissertations now in my study that contain studies that are not published at all. It's possible. Ideally, of course, it would be great if one of your articles will get some reviews from a journal and maybe get published, because then you have gone through the entire cycle, scientific cycle of writing, preparation, and so I think it's good if you have it, but if not, doesn't mean it's bad or it's of low quality, as long as the method is sound. So you have dissertations containing only published studies, also doesn't mean that it's high quality. It can be, but if most PhD projects last about 4 years. So if you just think about 4 years, and in the past the idea was that you should have 3 to 4 publications. This would mean that every year you should be able to come up with an idea, recruit participants, analyze data, write up the stuff, send it to a journal, get it published in 1 year. That's not possible. It is possible, but what you then get is doing stuff too rapidly. And that's what many of my colleagues and I had to do. I'm not saying that we did poor stuff with very interesting stuff, but investing time in thinking very carefully on what you need to do is equally important as having publications. And if you do, if you think very carefully about your proposal, about your studies, you will see it will pay off, because it will eventually lead to a high chance of getting stuff published. Because I'm not sure if you're aware, our field of psychology is slowly changing for the good in this way. If you look at the journals, the scientific journals, they find it much more important now that the method is good. Whatever comes out, that's not that important as long as your methodology is sound. And I'll show you a bit on how to perhaps do this. Yeah, a mix of the two. Yeah. So, just wondering what your view is on this, and what is the policy here? When I was one of my first PhD students I also had this idea, yes, your work, you should have about 3 to 4 publications. That was my idea. Now I'm more flexible. But again, I'm in a luxurious position. I don't have to do a PhD anymore. But what is your view? Or what is the policy here? Can someone of you tell me? But do you know there's a policy? Does it depend on your supervisor or promoter? One minimum publication. Yes.
With certain standard.
Yeah.
UI policy ada?
Yeah, UI policy, the university policy.
UI policy, one publication. Okay. But I've understood, but also in a certain journal even.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
As long as it's focused on bioscience.
It doesn't matter what the rank is of the journal. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's good. That's good. Sorry, yeah?
And the publication is the requirements for promotion.
Yeah.
So in order for them
Of course. I
to
mean,
still want me to go on it.
this is also the tension, right? The tension between dissertation, publication, and promotion.
Attention is time.
Sorry?
Attention is
It's time, yes, of course. But not the attention, the problem is time. You don't have enough time. Yes, exactly. But if you think about the bigger, I mean, again, if you think about the bigger picture, what does our science need? 1,000 studies with low quality, or 10 studies which really make an impact. Of course, from a meta perspective, I would say the last one, of course. But unfortunately, our faculties, they need to have, and the university need to have some way of how to decide whether you gets promotion. And then one assessment criteria is, how many publications do you have? If you think about it, it's quite ridiculous. It's only one aspect of your work, publication. But there are many other aspects. How well you teach, if you do civil service work, maybe some people are very good clinical psychologists, maybe some people work, I don't know, for the government. This all would matter. I say this because I'm not selling my own university's ideas here, but at Nassim University we have something which is called recognition and reward. That's a new policy in our university. Doesn't work perfectly, but the idea is, I think, good. It means that to get promotion, even to a professor, doesn't mean you need 20, 30, 40 publications. No, maybe you excel in other areas, which would still be good for you to become a professor or assistant professor or a lecturer. We even now have professors, these are teaching professors. They don't have a research background really, they excel in teaching. And I think this is a good way for you at least to know that this exists, right? And I understand, of course, that publications are one way to measure how good you are in the science. But if we are all maybe, we are acquainted about psychrometrics. And the question is this measurement a very valid measurement? I don't know, right? It's not always perhaps. Because to make sure that your publication is a good measurement, you want to make sure that the publication is of high quality, right? And that's something that I want to talk to you about more today. Push you to think about how to make sure that your proposal, your dissertation, your studies, all of these related aspects, hopefully can be of high quality. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I said, right? At Nassim University in Leuven, methodology, that's key now. Because the idea is if you focus too much on published work, it might undermine the quality of your methodology. If you only think my end product is I want to have a publication in a nice journal, maybe you're going to do stuff too quickly. Or maybe you are, for example, analyzing your data and you are torturing your data so much until you find something significant. And then you want to publish it. This is not what you want to do. You want to do a transparent, honest approach to your work. And the reviewers now, more and more, find it more important that your method is good. And that whatever comes out can still be published, even non-significant findings.
About that memory, I think some of the students still have struggle to find a significant result. So we can publish it. Do you want to share?
Very good. I think
Yeah, so but the point here is significant results are equally important as non-significant results. Significance is not more important than non-significance. And journals, I will show you, are slowly adopting this as well. That even showing that that nothing works is also important. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't invest time in doing this. For example, who of you is aware of the research in psychology called ego depletion? Who knows this word? Ego depletion. Yes, some you don't. So this is I did research on this as well. But this field is a field, the idea is very simple. The idea is that we as humans have a limited reservoir of energy. And if we do a certain task, it costs energy, and we have less energy for another task. So the study that they did, for example, is that you had participants who had to stand like this. This costs energy, like this, in the Kuda stance. And then they had to do another task. They had less energy for that task, and they performed worse than participants who didn't have this lower stance. Sounds very logical. But people try to replicate it now, and there were hundreds of studies, very low quality. Now they thought, let's do a very proper study, and they couldn't find the effect anymore. And I've had 2 studies of ego depletion, and now thinking they are low quality, I think now. I think maybe these findings that I have might be false positive findings. We found significance, but maybe by coincidence. Now we see if you really do a proper study, you don't find these effects anymore. What does that mean? That all of these 100 studies with thousands of participants who were paid hours of testing, useless game. Maybe, I don't know, 10,000 or 100,000 of euros, which is what is it, billion rupiah, has been spent on these studies on something that doesn't need to exist. And that's important to realize as well, that you want, of course, invest in something and know where you should invest. Because else you are in this bubble, thinking that something exists and the fact is there, well, maybe it's not. Yeah. Yeah, we already said that do you have to include published work? You said at least one publication, which I think is quite okay, right? And I hope it stays like this. But of course, the tension then is if you want to get promotion, you need to do more. And if I'm correct, but correct me if I'm wrong, if you want to get promotion, your new publication should be a little bit different from your dissertation, right? My personal reflection is a little bit odd, right? You just acquired an expertise and then you have to abandon your expertise. And it's a bit, well, okay, that's just my, don't tell people, but that's okay. Any questions about this topic? This is just an introductory topic, more about dissertation. Let's talk about methodological rigor and transparency, because that's an important issue. How can we improve the quality of our work? I don't have enough time to talk about all the different aspects, but I want to zoom in on certain important things. First of all, when you are involved in research, like I said, your proposal is key, right? Finding a suitable topic and then writing a proposal on this, spending time is important. So if I look at my university in Leuven, my faculty over there, sometimes they take a year on writing a proposal. In Maastricht, they try to do much faster because they want to also get publications or do studies, etc. I think it should be in between. You should have enough time to think about it carefully, but also you should still have enough time to do the studies, because it's only 4 years, your PhD project, right? Waiting also too long with conducting the studies is also perhaps a problem if you want to really successfully finish your dissertation on time. But at least knowing that this proposal is an important part is already, I think, a win for you. And making sure that you already rather clearly lay out what the different studies might become and what the methodology will be. So some of you said that they had to start immediately with a proposal, right? You had to, let me see, I will ask you actually, when did you have to do your PhD? Oh, sorry. When you had to do your PhD, that's not long, 2 years ago, you're very young, so maybe, right? No, but did you have to write your own proposal, or was it already given to you by your supervisor?
Your own, or you will give them by your supervisor? We have to do it on our own.
Okay, that's good to know. Because in some, maybe it can be here as well, you can get, your supervisors might get funding.
Oh.
Right? So they get funding. They get funding for a PhD student project. And to get the funding, you need to write a proposal. And then you get money, and then you try to have someone on that project, and actually the proposal is already there. And then you don't have to do a proposal anymore. Even in this situation, it's important for the PhD student, the beginning PhD student, to delve into the literature. That this person has an easy task. For example, I had that. When I was a PhD student, I was accepted as a PhD student on a proposal that was funded, and the proposal was already there. So I could already see the studies that my supervisor was planning to do, but still she forced me to think about it in my own way, and eventually my studies differed on many aspects from the studies that were planned, because I had some other ideas as well. And I think that's an important thing, good to know that the proposal is important. How is there a fixed amount of time that they need to do for the proposal?
At least, yeah. at the latest, in the semester 3 or 4, they have to get the effects for the
Exactly, yeah.
exam.
Exactly, that's okay. Good. Let me see. Am I correct? In your faculty, is the, if you think about research, type of research, is it more quantitative or qualitative? It depends. And PhD theses are, if you have a PhD thesis, though they collect, if you do quantitative research, only quantitative type of studies, or a mix of the two?
Usually it's also very experimental.
Yes.
Some laboratories also use quantitative.
I also think that that's something that I come from a really experimental school. So all of my studies were experimental studies when I was a PhD student. But now I see that it's very good for you indeed, if you do your proposal, to think that answering your main aim can sometimes be done in various ways, not only experimental, but indeed qualitative type of work, survey type of work, and that's good to case study, single case study type of work. And it's good to realize that even although maybe your supervisor might be an expert in experimental stuff, or mainly do that there are sometimes other approaches that might also give you part of the answer. To give an example, I just bless you. I just showed you a picture of one of my former PhD students. Her name is Charlotte, and her research was about victims of abuse that deny being abused. So unfortunately, you have sometimes people that say, no, nothing happened. I was not traumatized, but they were. And they deny because they are afraid for maybe the perpetrator, or they are ashamed. She was interested to know, what does that do with your cognition if you do that? And so she had planned many experimental studies, but then she realized part of answering this question would also be about asking people in the field what they think should happen when people deny. What is their view on it? What is the scientific view on the victims of abuse denying their experiences? And then this was more qualitative, more survey-based work, which could give you part of the answer. So, in general, if you do a study, your study would, if you can read it, would consist of introduction, hypotheses, method, participants, design, procedure, material statistical analysis. And I want to give you some tips on especially these aspects in the blue. Let me see. Yeah. And about some new, there are rather new ideas on how to improve your methodology. Some are very simple, but some are very new. The introduction, I will start with introduction. That's very simple. Of course, read relevant literature, identify the gaps. I already told you this. Make a case why your proposal is timely and important. And this for me is important. Even replications can be timely and important. So if you do a study, the exact same study as maybe someone else did, that might be very relevant even for a PhD thesis. So my question to you also is, doing replications, is that something that is encouraged in your faculty? Or do you always have to do something new? Sorry? Mostly.
No. We can do replication, but not the exact replication, but the conceptual.
Yeah. No, yeah. I'm talking about direct replications.
Yeah, direct.
The direct no. Direct no.
I was encouraged by the supervisors to, I was okay being doing replication, but for the upper pilot, and then for the real study, and to also incorporate the variables, so not exactly.
Yeah.
But the idea of the topic is from
Yeah, the idea of the topic is from, I refer to one study, so it's like
position.
Yeah.
Position encouragement to delve more to the topic
Yeah.
and then see other requirements.
Exactly. Yeah. This would be is that more a conceptual replication. Yeah, exactly. Which indeed, when you do that, they build on the previous work. Many aspects the same, but still some things are new, but not the exact same thing. Yeah.
That's okay.
That's okay. Yeah, it's certainly okay. No, it's certainly okay. No. I want to tell you that. No, it's certainly okay. Replications are very important. Conceptual and direct replication are very important for our field. Also important, yeah. And why is it important? Is because our field of psychology is not like physics, a hard science. We don't have any formulas that if we put in these parameters, we will get this result. As you might know, or maybe not know, is since about 10 years now, people are doing these huge replication studies. And they find that between 30 and 50% of these studies can only be replicated. So almost most of the studies cannot be replicated. So think about it, that means that your studies, if you would redo them, you will find something different. That's, if you think about that, damn, what does that mean? While policies being made about our stuff, that's why replications are important, to know how strong our work is. And that's why I also tell, even to PhD students or people who want to do PhD, you might think that only doing something new is something that is very important, but not necessarily. Knowing how strong the field is equally important. For some, maybe not that attractive, but I think it's good to know that good science, you want to have good science and cumulative science. You want to make sure that the body of work that we do is replicable. And here's what, I'm sure that some of my work is replicable. I know because some of the work has been replicated, but some might not be replicable. I mean, these are maybe very wild ideas. If you would redo it, maybe you will not find it anymore. And that's also a normal part of science, but at least it's good to know that replications can be very timely.
Since they have to prepare a proposal, if they want to conduct, for example, a direct or conceptual replication, do you have any tips how to build a strong argument for the proposal? Why the replication is important?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. The question is, if you want to do that in your PhD proposal, you need to come up with a case why that is important. So here's an example. I'm in the memory field, and there's, for example, there are some of these studies in our field that have only been done once, and of which we don't know, and we want to build on that study. For example, there's one study in which students, faculty students, psychology students, they were told, falsely told, that they committed a crime. So they were misled. And some of these students, they accepted it. And they eventually, after a couple of interviews, said, yes, I committed a crime, which they didn't. They didn't commit it, but they started to believe in it. So, let's say your PhD topic is about memory for crimes, and you see this study, you say, well, this is, well, if you think about it, wow, this is so unbelievable that this can happen. If we want to build on this, we first want to know how strong is this work even. Because we want to build on this work. I'm not going to do a PhD on shaky science, so I first want to replicate this first study. If this comes out, the same result, then we will follow this route of the PhD. If we don't follow, if we don't find it, we might perhaps come up with different studies. That could be a case, because you build upon previous work. If some of your previous work, if you have good reasons to argue that this is so counterintuitive, that's never been replicated, we need to know how strong it is before we even can do the following studies, then maybe one of your first studies could be a replication. Yeah. Is that, yeah.
Could the cultural differences also can become the argument? Yeah.
Oh, certainly, yeah. Certainly, yeah. If you have reasons to believe that culture might play a role in whether or not an effect will happen. That might be an interesting way to, yes, certainly. And I will come to that in a bit as well, that most of the research still, there's been a recent study just in American Psychologist, a journal, most of the work still, even when, let's say 5 to 10 years ago, there has been a call in our field for more diversity, most of the research is still being done in the US and Europe, in psychology, most. While, for some aspects in psychology, it's crystal clear that if you would do the same study here in Indonesia, you will find different results. And we have been doing already some research in Indonesia and also, for example, the Netherlands, and in some of our work we see clear differences. So this adopting a cross-cultural approach could be, if it's needed, a very important reason. Yeah. Okay. So this is, I think, is important. Hypothesis. So if we want to do a new study, we want to come up with some good hypotheses. I can tell you, we as psychologists are not that good always at coming up with good hypotheses. So you want to create a hypothesis that can be really tested. The problem is, the problem is that I'm not sure if you know, but I already told you, our field doesn't have any formulas, right? Our theories, let's say, the big majority of psychological theories are called verbal theories. I'm not sure if you ever heard about it, verbal theories, which means, for example, that you will say, well, a theory about attention. Let's say one theory about attention is, if you look at a central aspect, your attention to it will be much better than if you will look at the peripheral stuff. Something like this. It's a verbal theory. It doesn't specify how much attention. The amount of attention, or the way you measure it, is never being explained in these theories, which means our hypotheses are based on these very general theories, which make it sometimes very difficult to really test them and to really falsify them. You know what falsification is? To prove your hypothesis wrong. I'm not sure, maybe it's a difficult question, but when would your hypothesis be falsified? When? Let's say if I have a prediction. My prediction is, if I look at the screen, my memory for what is in it will be better than when I look at the laptop. That's my prediction, my hypothesis. When will that hypothesis be falsified? Yeah, when we test it, but when will it? When will you say that my hypothesis is wrong? That's what I want to hear. When you would say that there is no effect, no difference, that would be the most standard answer. So I say that's maybe not the correct answer. So, so this thing was okay, right? So this is what people say. So, but if my hypothesis, looking at the screen will lead to better memory than looking at the laptop about the content of this stuff, and let's say I don't find it. I find that participants in the screen have equal memory performance as this, non-significant, and people say, so it's falsified. It's not. Because absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And you cannot accept the null, right? You cannot accept it. I will come to that in a bit. How to make sure you can falsify your hypotheses. And it depends on effect sizes. Come to that in a bit. But that's an important thing to regard, because that would mean that you can never falsify your hypotheses in many of our studies. That maybe it's not a very good quality, right? Because falsification is an important philosophical element of science, right? Karl Popper, the philosopher of science, of course, has made very clear, if you want to have good science, your stuff should be able to be falsified. And if we cannot do so, what are we doing then, right? So, I'm not sure if you've ever read this paper. That's a very interesting paper. The title, why hypothesis testers, these people like us, should spend less time testing hypotheses. It's published in Perspective Psychological Science, one of the big journals in our field, and the thing is very clear. We want to do too many hypotheses. What we should do perhaps first is what is called exploratory research. Perhaps we shouldn't come up with hypotheses if we're not sure if the theory is right, if we're not sure if we can falsify. Let's do stuff without any hypotheses. Let's just do. And we will see what comes out, and based on these results, we can slowly build. This is not a popular opinion for PhD students because you don't have the time. But exploratory research is equally important as what we can call the counter version confirmatory research. So also here, I'm not telling you that you should do exploratory research. Today is a session in which you can more critically reflect on your own research and how strong this research is, and whether you can maybe, for some aspects, maybe improve it. Like, for example, thinking about more exploratory research. Should we immediately conduct an experiment and come up with hypotheses, and later we see, and when we know how difficult it is to come up with good hypotheses? We just discussed. We're writing a paper together, and now we realize our hypotheses maybe are not the best hypotheses. That's the issue. It doesn't say, oh, that we're bad researchers. No, it's maybe the field needs maybe some more exploration, could be. And that's an important thing to think about as well. Exploratory research. I'm not sure, is it done here often? Okay, go ahead. The mic.
For me personally, and some of my friends in the laboratory, we do some exploratory research work in terms of literature review, and we try to replicate some previous findings using secondary data because we are taught to create experiments, right?
Yeah.
So we need firm ground to do that, and we usually do using survey data, natural sciences, and usually and just one time when we built a bunch of data from OSF, we try to do some funny things with other people's data, but we learned that in our lab, but I think it's not yet to be made required.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I think if I also look at my own colleagues and also my own research group, it's not the case that most of the stuff that we do is exploratory, right? Also, what I'm saying here doesn't mean you need to radically change all the stuff that you are already planning. It's more about being aware of maybe improving the quality. And exploratory research can help also in terms of, you just told me about manipulation checks. Sometimes we have manipulations, but we perhaps are not really clear if this manipulation is a good manipulation. We will just do it, and exploring first whether this manipulation works. It will cost time, but will eventually be a good investment in the future then. Yeah. We'll do a couple of slides and maybe we have a short break then, yeah? Okay, so maybe I want to do this, because this will take some time. This is about your participants, how to select your participants, right? And that's an important thing. More and more journals find it very important to justify your sample and the number of participants that you tested. I'm an editor of a journal called Memory. I'm the chief editor, and I still see many submissions coming in without any justification why a sample size was chosen. They just say, well, 45 participants were tested. Why 45? Why not 42 or 46 or 50? What is the reason 45? And that's important because if you come up with a hypothesis, but sure you know, each hypothesis can lead to a different sample size. So you need to justify your sample size actually for each hypothesis. I didn't do that before. Most of our researchers don't do that. They just do, for example, a power analysis or a general power analysis, not knowing that actually for each hypothesis that you have, you should do a sample size justification. And there are different sample size justifications. And if you don't know him, Daniel Lackett, certainly look up his research. He is a star in the area of statistics, etc., psychology. And he already said that there are different ways on how you can justify your sample size. I'm not sure if you can see this, but there are different justifications. First of all, this is not possible mostly in our field. For example, when you say, I'm going to test forensic psychologists, and you're going to measure all forensic psychologists that exist. You're going to measure the entire population. That's often not possible for us because we want to generalize to the entire human population, so we cannot test everyone. That's why we're going to do a representative sample. But sometimes we can. As an example, a couple of weeks ago, I organized a symposium for Dutch legal psychologists. And almost all legal psychologists were from the Netherlands were at that meeting, and I tested almost all of them. That was my sample justification. These are all people that exist in the Netherlands that do this type of work. That's why I don't need to do a power analysis. This is the entire population. This is also important, resource constraints. It could be that I say you tested 45 participants, you couldn't get more. Why? Because maybe your student who tested only had time between February and May, and then it had to be ended, and you couldn't test more. Resource constraints. Or you only had 10,000, no, 10,000 rupees is not a lot, but let's say you only had a million rupiah to spend for participant compensation. That's what you have. And that's the only money you have. And that means you can only test so many participants. That's a justification. I'm not saying that it's the best justification, but you can explain to your scientific community why this number is there in your paper. What most people do is what is called an a priori power analysis. Doing a power analysis before data collection. But what is very important if you do that is to know which effect are you interested in. Who has done here a priori power analysis? Please raise your hand. Who has done power analysis in general? Most have never done any power analysis, which is okay. If you do a power analysis, you're going to try to examine how many participants you need. Most of the time, you have to put in all kinds of programs, you have to put in a number, an effect size number, how large you think your effect will be. And most of the researchers then use effect sizes from previous studies that you can see here. What effect do you expect to find? That's what most researchers do, and I will show you there is perhaps a better approach. And this is the approach of the smallest effect size of interest. I mean, there are different ways to conduct a priori power analysis. I think you know G-power, I guess. But you have many other superpower, you have so many different things now. And if we come back to the falsification, if you want to falsify a hypothesis, you need the smallest effect size of interest. And what is the smallest effect size of interest? This is something, again, that Daniel, he's not the inventor of it. This idea of smallest effect size of interest, the smallest effect that you find interesting is something that has been stated for more than 50 years, but has become more and more important now. read these papers if you're interested in this. But what is the smallest effect of interest? It's the smallest effect that is maybe relevant for your theory, or is practically relevant, or is something that you personally care about. And if you think about, if you now think, what the hell does he mean here? I'm going to give you a concrete example. Ibo Devishi is a traffic psychologist, and you might be interested in this research. Let's say interested in what happens if people are driving on the streets here in Depok, and during the driving they're looking at their cell phone. Will that lead to the driver changing his driving behaviors, right? Let's say you want to test it. Which effect would you be interested in? I could say that, can I use your cell phone? Yeah, I want to do anything. So if you're driving, and I'm driving on this road, this side of the road, and I'm looking at the telephone, and this leads to me going to the other direction, even, you could say that even a small difference, maybe 1 centimeter to the other road, would be relevant because it could already lead to an accident, right? Maybe 1 centimeter already. That could be the smallest effect that you would be interested in, right? That's something that you need to decide as a community. For example, another example. Let's say you are a doctor and you do research into cancer treatments, new cancer treatments. Let's say you have a new cancer treatment and you want to know how well this cancer treatment works. Then likely you're not interested whether it leads to a small improvement. No, you want to make sure that this new treatment is much better than the previous one. So you're interested in more bigger differences. So the example of traffic psychology, maybe a small difference can already be relevant, can lead to an accident. Maybe in another area, only huge differences are relevant because already treatments exist. I don't know in your field what effect sizes you find interesting, and I can tell you most researchers have never thought about this issue. Which effects are we really interested in? My field, I'm a psychology and law researcher. I'm interested, for example, in witnesses who come up with statements to the police. And we have come up with our smallest effect size of interest. We say that, let's say I'm interested if I do not have much sleep compared to a witness who has much sleep, what effect will that have on their testimony? And the smallest effect size that I think is interesting is a difference of already one detail in the testimony. Because one detail could, for example, be a detail about very important, could already lead to the police investigating something. One detail difference, that's an effect size, could be relevant in my field. In your field, I don't know. That's something which often people don't think about, but that's needed if you really want to falsify your predictions, the smallest effect size of interest. So here are some studies in which we have thought about smallest effect size of interest. One way to ask, or one way to know what the smallest effect size of interest is to ask your academic community. So we asked people, experts like you, in my field, what do you think is the smallest effect that you care about? There's one way to do so. In this paper, it's a commentary paper, I said that if you really want to build science, we need to think about which effects are relevant. Because if we just choose effects from previous studies, we don't know if these are real effects. They might be based on low quality studies. You as a researcher have to decide which effects might be interesting for you. And you might disagree with each other about which effects. Maybe, Davey, you might say, well, you say 1 centimeter, no, that's not interesting. 10 centimeter for whatever reason. And that's okay. But that leads to better science than just randomly, or not quasi-randomly, putting an effect size or thinking that an effect size is interesting. And this is not an easy task. And again, what I'm saying here doesn't mean that you again, to radically change. These are just new things in the field of our psychology that people are experimenting with to improve their methodology, right? If you want to know how many participants you need to test, even for a survey or also experimental research, why 100 participants? Why 150? What is the reason why you come up with this? Be transparent about the reason. Maybe it's not a good reason, but at least the reviewers might know your decision-making processes behind it. And this way, you can become better. And I think we have seen as well, that if you work together with your colleagues and you try to every time see where can we improve in our methodology, the research will become better and better, hopefully. Yeah, there's here also examples of small factors of interest, and I want to show you, these are all studies in which we try to come up with which effects do we really find interesting in our field. That's something that we are spending a lot of time with. Also here in Indonesia, by the way. Do you know the journal, right, Prof? Your journal here. So, and even with colleagues in Indonesia, we have been talking about the idea from what effect sizes are interesting. Not only relying on p-value, but think about more about effect sizes. And you don't have to read this paper, but perhaps do read this paper from this famous one, David Molina, also in Proust. And she talks about this as well. She talks about the importance of good methodology, good effect sizes if you do research in urban context, also in general, right? Let me see. Something else. Yeah, who has ever heard of the smallest effect size of interest? No, who has never heard of this? Please raise your hand. So the ones who don't raise their hand, they know. Oh, I thought so. Yeah, okay. So it's still a rather, again, the idea is not new. It exists already, especially in treatment settings. It's called the minimally detectable difference. It's something that already exists in the more clinical field. It's now entering more psychology field. And again, maybe read a paper on it and see if this is something that you can use or understand. Let's have a small break. Is it okay?
Okay, can I ask maybe again? Ada pertanyaan? Questions? Yes, Caca. Boleh.
Boleh.
Hello, my name is Caca. I wanted to ask about the exploratory study that you mentioned before, because I'm not sure on how far exploratory that a study could be included as exploratory, because in the study that I currently work on, in the first study, I could say that it's quite exploratory, but we have set hypothesis, but based on the results, it's the results is not it's as expected, because it's exploratory, we found that it's not exactly as what we expected before, so it's gonna be included as exploratory, or
No. So actually, no. So if you came up with a hypothesis, it's not exploratory anymore. So exploratory is that you don't have any idea. So for example, I'm doing now exploratory research on AI-created fake news. So we're creating it, and the question is, if people get this AI-created fake news, if they see it, will they think it's real news? And I don't have any predictions what will happen. So I don't know, will they accept it as real, maybe not. So we're just making it, we just created AI, created fake news, so we had ChatGPT or Gemini, I'm not sure which one. We created some fake news stories and true news stories we gave to participants, and we asked them questions basically like, do you think this is real or not? And I don't have any predictions at all, no hypothesis. What you are mentioning, actually you have a hypothesis. Whether it's good or not doesn't really matter now. Let's say it's a good hypothesis. Let's say it's a good hypothesis, and I likely it will be. But oftentimes, we don't find what we expect. And what we can do then is what's called exploratory analyses. So we might do new analyses that we didn't plan before. We should not say that we did plan, we didn't plan, because we find something that we cannot explain. And then we maybe want to do some extra analyses to explain why we didn't find what we planned to do. That's exploratory analysis. So that's not entirely exploratory, because you did have an hypothesis before. Yeah. And we'll come back to that exploratory analysis part after the break as well. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So like the biology is like the voices that from the prediction that you
Yeah, exactly. So exploratory, real exploratory research is just you don't have, you almost don't have any clue. So for example, if you want to create new stimuli, right, and you don't know how your participants will react to it, let's first do some people might call pilot study. Explore what will happen, and based on that, you want to fine tune the stimuli, and then you want to do a study maybe with some more concrete hypotheses. Yeah.
If I want to do explanatory design, I need to explain in a corner.
Why is it exploratory?
I have a new finding
Yeah.
that I need to review.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to explain what I need to take explanatory design.
Exploratory analysis, you mean?
Yeah, and explanatory analysis.
Yeah, you could. You don't have to, but let's say you expected something. You expect, for example, that this is not the example that you have. Let's say you expect smoking. If you smoke too much, you will sleep better. I know it's true. Then you test it and you see people who smoke sleep worse. Yet you didn't expect it, and you maybe want to explain where does it come from, and then you might think, oh, maybe I didn't control for age in my analysis, so let's do some extra analyses, and these are called exploratory analyses. Doesn't mean you have to do them. Maybe it makes maybe it does make sense later on, but oftentimes you want to know why was I wrong, at least in my hypothesis. And then sometimes you want to do extra analysis to try to explain it, and sometimes you cannot get an answer even with these exploratory analysis. But it might be a good way to try. But even if exploratory analysis can also happen even if you find something that you do predict. Let's say smoking, you sleep better. I indeed found it. But now, later on I thought, wow, would there be a difference between men and women? I didn't predict it. I just want to explore. I also don't know what will happen. So I will do this analysis as well. That's an exploratory analysis. You didn't plan that before. Maybe later when you have the data, you thought, oh, maybe interesting for whatever the reason. That's an exploratory analysis. I tell you this because oftentimes people, they do all kinds of analyses that they did not plan before, and it is written in the paper as if it was planned before. Right? And that's because you mislead the reader, as if you planned everything, but you didn't plan everything. Some of these new analyses came up later. I will talk after the break about the importance of this, using, for example, something which is called registered reports, pre-registration, something that can help you to distinguish between what is called exploratory and what is called confirmatory. Clear? Break? Yeah, you're the boss. 5 minutes? Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, good. Go break.
stretching. Atau udah pusing duluan? Itu yang ada di
Okay, so we continue. Okay, so we have 30 minutes, right? Time goes so fast. Have you read this paper? Did some of you read this paper? It's an interesting paper. We're not talking about materials, how to increase the methodology is also looking at your measurements. And this paper by Jessica Flake and Eco Fried have this paper called Measurement Specialment, Questionable Measurement Practices. So, I already talked to you about doing a good sample size justification is already quite difficult to do. What is also difficult to do is to make sure that the materials that you use, surveys, questionnaires, manipulations, your dependent variables, whether they are psychometrically sound, right? So, also just before this meeting, I was talking also with Davey, and you are all in the psychological measurement lab, right? And if you, for example, do psychological tests, like intelligence tests or personality tests, we all already know and are being taught that these tests should measure what they purport to measure. They should be psychometrically sound, valid, and reliable. But we often perhaps forget that if we do other type of research, like experimental research, in which, for example, we test people's attention span or we test people's memory performance, that all of these tests should also be valid and reliable. But if you look into the field of psychology, most of the time we don't know. People just come up with a new way to test something, test attention, memory, inhibition, and they will just do. So, to make sure that your measurement really does what it should do, you should actually ask yourself 6 questions if you do study and if you measure something. The first question is, what is your construct? What is the construct that you're measuring? And why and how did you select your measure? Did you come up with it yourself? Did you ask someone else? Did you look into the literature? What measure did you use to operationalize the construct? Right? Describe the measure, administration procedure. How did you quantify your measure? How was it called? What is the coding procedure? How did you come up with this? How many stimuli did you give? Did you modify the scale? And if so, why? And did you create a measure on the fly? So did you just create something? These are very important questions to see and make sure that psychological measurement is likely really sound. And this is not being done that often actually. That's something that researchers have been seeing, that we often use all kinds of measurements, but we don't know if they're really measuring what they should measure. for me in my area as well, we give participants, for example, some stimuli on a screen, and we ask people, what do you remember about this? We give them a recognition task. And our idea is that this recognition task measures recognition. I don't know if it really measures recognition. Maybe it measures maybe some other stuff, maybe some attention stuff, maybe some prior knowledge stuff. I don't know sometimes. It's my assumption. Thinking about this carefully in your own research about the measurements that you're using and whether they indeed are psychometrically sound can improve the quality of your research. Now I want to talk about one other way to improve the quality of your research, which is open science. This is a more overarching theme. Here's a brief paper that I wrote also for Proust, I should still remember, a brief reflection on open science. And open science can further help improving your methodology. Open science is being transparent about all steps in your research, to be transparent about the decisions that you make. Oftentimes our decisions are all made here up in our head. We don't write them up, and we forget about the decisions we made 6 months ago. And if we don't write them up, we might fool ourselves. We might think that we planned something or made a certain decision while we did not. So it's very important to be transparent about which decisions that you make. So this is, let's say, a little bit the research cycle. You come up with some idea, see if you can do the study, plan the study, conduct the study, interpret the results, report them, publish them, discuss with your peers, and all of these steps, there's a possibility to engage in open science. For example, pre-registering your research, we'll come to that in a bit. Team science, doing studies together with other teams in other countries, open notebooks, open protocols, open materials, to put your materials open to everyone to be used, open data, you just said that people share their data with others, open access, etc. So this open science field has become a very important development in psychology, in science general, to make sure that hopefully our research will become better, because we can more easily see how others do it, we can better understand the materials that they use, and this way improve our own work. I'm not sure if you know these papers, but I think for psychological science it's important to be aware of this. This is already done in 2015. This was a large replication study in which they tried to replicate 100 studies that were published before. They tried to replicate them. Only 30%, bless you, only 30% of these studies could be replicated. 30. 70% could not be replicated. So a couple of weeks ago, they again did this huge replication study. This is in science, this is in nature. Now they found 50%. A little bit higher, but still not really big. I told you before that this shows again how our field is. That a lot of the work that we do likely cannot be replicated. Which maybe it's not maybe a big problem immediately, but it does tell us about it. It's a little bit self-reflection that if we do studies, and again try to make sure to improve it and make the method and research as good as possible, so that if your research is not replicated, it is not because your method was poor, but maybe because it's just a fragile effect or whatever, right? So this replication issue is an important issue in our field. And one important thing that I really think can help you is the idea of pre-registration and registered reports. This can really help the quality of your research. For quantitative research, for qualitative research, and pre-registration is nothing else than writing down your proposal before you collect your data. That's there are different versions, but this is the most simple version. Before you start collecting data, you write up what your hypotheses are, if you have hypotheses, what your analyses are, And then you do that, for example, on the open science framework, and then you start collecting data. If you have the data, you look back at what you planned. Which analysis did I plan to do? You will do these analyses, and if you're going to change from your plan, that's okay. You will report on that. And why is it important? Because you don't want to fool yourself. It prevents biases, and this is very important. It prevents what is called harking, hypothesizing after results are known. So this happens sometimes. So you get your data, you find a different effect, and you say, I thought that would happen actually. And then you write your introduction in such a way as if you predicted this.
How often you do this?
Yeah. So we know people do it. There have been studies on how often people do this in the field, and these are reasonable percentages in our field of people that do that, and also don't know that you shouldn't do it, right? This is called questionable research practices. So, because you give the idea as if you planned it, but you didn't plan it. And it's perfectly okay that you are wrong, that your prediction is wrong, perfectly okay. It's also wrong it's also okay if you plan an analysis and later find out that's not a good analysis. Perfectly okay. Then you say, well, I planned this, but now thinking about it more carefully, I was wrong. Maybe you should say it this way in your paper. But I've had that in one of my papers. I think I planned to do an ANOVA, simple ANOVA. I pre-registered this, so I collected the data. Then I looked at my data and thought, damn, that's the wrong analysis that I planned. How did I come up with this? I need to do a chi-square analysis. So I said in my paper, I planned to do ANOVA, but look at the data, that was not the correct analysis. It should be a chi-square analysis. No one who cares that I said that. Better that you do it this way than report analysis as if you are a magician and knew all of this before. We can make errors, we can make faults, that's perfectly okay, but be transparent about the decisions that you make. Pre-registration is therefore a very important tool that can prevent us from fooling ourselves. We are humans, we know about biases, that we might think we find something, but we don't find something. This might help us preventing this. And again, here, the benefits of pre-registration and registered reports. Registered reports is a variation of pre-registration. Who knows about what a registered report is? It's a very time-consuming, but this is if you want to get stuff published, you should do registered reports. What is registered reports? You write up your proposal, introduction and methodology. You send that to a journal that accepts registered reports. So you send up your proposal to a journal. This report will be reviewed by researchers in the field. They give you comments about your method, introduction. You might change it, and at a certain point they might say, okay, we accept your proposal, and then you can start data collection. And the nice thing is, it doesn't matter what comes out, your study will be published. So you do your data collection, you might find something completely different than what you expect, but the journal will publish your research. So you have 100% guarantee that your study will be published. But the nice thing is, before you do data collection, your method should first be deemed acceptable. So that's an interesting, it can be time consuming of course, but it is a very interesting thing. Some of my PhD students have done that as well in their own PhD, and they have a guarantee of a publication, and of a publication with a strong method. So your proposal then is being sent to a journal that accepts such registered reports. And we know that doing this, we see that the results that come out are more realistic in the sense that in most of the journals in psychology we find significant findings. The majority of studies which are published are all significant. publication bias, which is very weird. We should expect more non-significant findings, but people don't want to submit them, or people don't want to accept them. But with registered reports, we now see an increase of non-significant findings being published, because we as a scientific community have agreed that if you have accepted this registered report, that whatever comes out, this will be published. And that's an interesting route to take. So this is the idea of registered report, right? So you develop the idea, you will send it to a journal, it will be peer reviewed. If that's being accepted, then you can do your science. You can start up recruiting participants, write up your results, and whatever comes out, you will have a publication. If you want to know more, look at this paper from Christopher Chambers, who talks about the past, present, and future registered reports. I'm not sure if you can see it, but you have here a registered report is a sub-variation of pre-registration. So the light blue is these are pre-registration, and here in a subcategory are these registered reports. Why? They are similar as pre-registration, with the difference that the pre-registration is something you can do without sending it to a journal. You can do just in your own lab, in your own team. But registered report, you send that to a journal, and that journal will review your proposal, or also called registered report, and then you will see whether you can conduct your study. Here are some examples of my colleague Paul Riesthuis. He did a registered report in our journal, so he wanted to do a meta-analysis. He first proposed how to conduct a meta-analysis. Then the reviewers eventually, after a couple of rounds, said you can do the meta-analysis. Then he did, and it was published. Or Carrie Marr also did a research on stress and memory. Also did a registered report. First send up the proposal, and sometimes there's interest also for exploratory research. We're not fully sure what you will find, or risky research. You can try a registered report. Who of you already engages with open science? No, maybe even before. Who does not? Who knows open science? So the rest doesn't, because most of you never raise your hands or do like this behind your screen, and I don't see it. Malu, I understand. Who has already engaged with this? Who is doing some stuff on open science? Can you tell me about it? In what way? In what way?
Yeah, in our lab, we are going to upload our study design to WhatsApp for pre-registration, and we also usually use WhatsApp only for science lab. To look for preprints and some. We also use WhatsApp to look for open access data.
Okay, good. And you can so pre-registration, preprints, looking for data, and you.
Basically, same with Mario, because I'm from the laboratory, same laboratory. But 2 weeks ago, I sent my paper in the publisher, and then they give me feedback like you need to put some data in OSS. So I tried to make like my script studio and then my material, so the reviewer can check the material. So something like that.
That's good. Okay. I saw some others here as well. Who else engaged in open science? Can you tell me what and how? I know.
Yes, with Mariumi in Memang Study with you.
Yeah.
We have
from hypothesis, and all of the data also we put in the Excel, and the result is made me confused because actually the result is different with our pre-registration, and now we are struggle and writing the result and the discussion.
Yeah, okay, good. So it's good to, I mean, this is normal, right? So let's think about if you didn't pre-register, right? And you didn't have clear hypotheses, and now you find something that you didn't expect, what will you do? Will you also be confused? Or you will write a story as if everything was predicted. Likely this will happen. Not intentionally, but that's the way we as humans work. We want to make a coherent story, but that's not how everything went, right? And open science, if you're not doing anything with it, experiment with it. Even go to the open science framework or read a paper. Again, the things that I'm telling you now are just some tips that you can use. Take one of them or look at one of them and see if this is something for you in your lab. Share it with your supervisor, share it with your colleagues. See whether this might be something. Maybe some of the things are not relevant for you, or maybe too overwhelming, or you disagree. Perfectly okay. But I can tell you that many of these things are the developments that our psychological science is facing. These are developments that you will see and encounter in journals. What you're describing, that you submitted a paper to a journal and the reviewer asks for your analysis and data, that will become more and more relevant. And you will see this more and more often. So if you don't do it and you are trying to get a paper published, you will encounter problems in the future, because you will encounter reviewers who are like you, the new generation, who engage in open science. And they ask you, okay, but can you show me your materials? Can you show me your data? I want to see it. And if you don't do it, then they say, well, then maybe I will reject the paper, because why is this researcher not transparent about it? And sometimes people are afraid to share stuff because they're afraid that they made an error. But rather detect an error in the review phase, then afterwards see that you have an error in a publication. And even if that happens, then be honest. We have had, one of my colleagues did a meta-analysis, which was published. And then suddenly, and everything, we pre-registered, open data, everything. Then a colleague of us, who is not on the paper, contacted me and said, Henry, I looked at data, I think something is wrong. I said, whoa, let's look. Yes, something is wrong. So we went to the journal. He said, okay, the first author did the meta-analysis, something went wrong. Okay, we're now doing a correction of it. Or maybe we're pulling back the paper and putting a new version in it. Just being honest, because this is also open science, right? That you detect that maybe something now is not correct. And I think that's good to know. I mean, we as humans, even as scientists, can make errors. And we want to find ways and how to minimize the chance that this can happen in publications. Open science is one way of doing that, right? Okay. Oh yeah, some of you already told about that you engage in pre-registration. Also here, try to do it, and you can see pre-registration, it's a plan. It's nothing fixed. It's just a proposal. And when I did my first pre-registration, looking back, I think, damn, that was a very bad pre-registration. But this is also practice. Becoming better in it, and yeah. Did everyone once did the rest of reports?
It's heard.
You heard? Okay. Try.
Interesting.
Try. Get almost guaranteed for publication. So yeah, why not? Right? So yeah. Open data, some of you already shared it. Open code. Okay. I think almost 10 years ago, I gave a talk here about open science. And
Nobody
believed me. Many said, that we shouldn't do open science. It's others. Now we see that the field has changed rapidly. Open science is a very normal thing. One of the things that your colleagues at that time, not only your colleagues, I still hear from other colleagues as well in other countries, that they are afraid that if you do open science, people will steal your idea. Is that still something, or is this still a concern, maybe for some of you, or do you think there are other challenges for doing open science? Maybe there are not no challenges. No time?
Yeah.
That always no time.
I mean, I don't know. Oftenly, we are too busy in preparing our study, and then at some point we become forget to do the presentation because we are in the beginning of the development.
Yeah. No, that can happen. But at a certain point, this should be a standard part of your research cycle. It should become
like an SOP.
Yeah, a normal part of your research, right? Then it doesn't cost any time. We're all trained without open science. The new generations, hopefully also this faculty, are being trained more and more with these ideas, and they will do it just normally as part of their daily job. Okay, last part. I don't have much time. You know that I thought that I would talk maybe an hour or an hour and a half. I know I talk too much. And even you say yes.
Are you okay with this?
Yes. Sorry?
Yes.
Are you okay? Yeah. I have 2 more hours. Okay. So you might think, how is this related to methodology? And well, actually, they asked me to say something about this. And I think this is a challenge for all of us. So also what I'm telling you now is based on personal perspective and also part of research on this and my own vision. And this is something that is really ongoing, AI, and something that we are all confronted with it. And my basic message already now, use AI ethically. And then the question, what is ethically? And then we can debate on that, but I will show you a little bit how. So again, here is the research side. So I'm going to talk about AI in research, not so much about AI for students who write their thesis using AI. We'll talk a little bit about this, but especially in our research, how can we use AI for our research in a good way, right? So I think in all phases of the research cycle, you can already use AI. And my personal perspective is, if you can use it, if this person, if it's AI, we're talking about a person as AI, but if AI can become a good sparring partner, use it. But there are limits, there are pitfalls. First of all, the speed with the amount of AI is enormous. I'm not sure if you do a lot of AI stuff or look at this stuff, but it's unbelievably huge. So I told you I'm also at my university. I'm at our faculty the coordinator of what is called teaching professionalization. And almost for 2 years now, we're giving AI workshops for our teachers and how to deal with it, etc. And every month or so, there are new AI tools, unbelievable. And they can do so much. Almost all of my pictures are all AI created now. This is all AI. For all my presentations this week, all AI, the pictures, right? Not the content, the pictures. I used to look on internet for some photos, and most of the time I was not happy that, I want to have a more beautiful photo, a more beautiful picture, then I have to ask permission from the person who created it, and I want to combine this picture and this picture, but I'm not a designer of, I want to say a curse word, but what should I do? AI is a solution, right? And some can be specifically used for your research purposes. So what role can AI play in research then? So And what role do you want AI to play in your research? And that's an important question for you to ask yourself. First, do you want AI to be used? And if so, in what way? How can it help you? So, and I think a very important thing is the role of ethics. What is ethically allowed? Do you, for example, start with AI and say, well, I'm a researcher in traffic psychology, come up with a new research idea. Or you come up with your research idea yourself, and then say to AI, well, imagine you are a fellow colleague of traffic psychology. This is my idea. Give me some comments. A different approach, and my personal perspective, the second one will be better. Because you do your own thinking still, and you have a sparring partner that might help you. I say it because I have already colleagues who do the first one. Already the first. They say, well, I don't have any ideas for new research. I'm a researcher in forensic psychology. Give me an idea. And some of them share this to me. Henry, look, AI found this interesting idea. And I said, that's not interesting, man. It's not that it is AI that it should be interesting. That's something that I will tell you. There's research showing the pros of AI and also the cons. AI is not necessarily superior to our own thoughts. So, let's first talk about, can AI be used for these three parts? And there's research on it. Can we use AI to generate our ideas? There's people who are doing research. The research on AI is unbelievably rapid. And here's a paper, when ChatGPT writes your research proposal, scientific creativity in the age of AI. Interesting thing is that they had ChatGPT write research proposals, and the results indicated that the ChatGPT proposals received higher scores, better research proposal scores. So you might think, well, it's good then to let ChatGPT do it. But is it what we want? Is it ethical? Is it something that we think we should outsource? Should we outsource our own thoughts to AI fully? My personal perspective is no. Maybe it can help here, but do we want to do that? Because if you look at other research, how AI ideas affect the creativity, diversity, and evolution of human ideas. The interesting thing is that if you have AI help you, it did not affect the creativity at all. AI made ideas different, not better. So there's research showing here that AI might help you. Doesn't make it necessarily a better idea, maybe a different perspective. That's why for me personally, in our own lab, some people use AI a lot. I use it, on average I would say, but more as a sparring partner. I develop my own stuff, and maybe AI can help me looking at it. And then I still decide whether I will accept what AI will do to me or not. And oftentimes it will. I will come up with some concrete examples too. So my perspective is, create your own ideas. It can help. Really support a sparring partner, just like a colleague. And you can disagree with your colleague. You can disagree with AI as well, right? So what about the next phase? Collecting data. Can you use AI to collect data? People are already experimenting with it, of course. And here's a nice book, Revisualizing Academic Research with AI. And you see there, here's some interesting AI tools for automating data collection. Let me see, do I have it here? Yeah. Despite the advantages, the deployment of AI presents several challenges. Concerns regarding data quality, bias, ethical consideration. And I would indeed say, this is something I would not outsource to AI at all. Right? We don't have control about what AI will do really on how to collect the data. So I would be very careful doing that. What about analyzing data? This is interesting. Some of you use R here, maybe some SPSS, maybe JAST, Yamovi. There's so many different statistical tools, software tools. I'm not sure if you already know, but SPSS has already AI assistance. Recently, RStudio has AI support, and we are using it already now as well. The past months, one of my postdocs is giving us R workshops. Every week indeed. And one of the first things he says is that if you don't know how to write a code, just ask ChatGPT, and oftentimes it gives you very good code on how to analyze the results. You just have to describe very carefully what your variables are, what you intend to do, and it can really help you. And in this way, you still thought about the analysis that you want to do, but you need maybe some extra help on how to create the code. So yes, AI I think can be used to ask for code, syntax, and it can also be used as a guidance. For example, you have some sort of data and you say, well, I want to analyze it using logistic regression. But are there other alternatives that I might not be aware of? And could you help me in how to do that, how to learn it? AI can help you really quickly with this. So this can certainly be of a good development. And then this one, writing. So interpreting the results, writing it up, sharing, and especially the writing. How do we use AI in writing? So many universities now have policies on how to use AI ethically in writing papers. Many universities have these policies on the university websites. I did find something on AI here at NGOPI. I don't think it's a general policy. I think this is from a journal of the Journal Sociology, what is hosted by this university. And it says that that authors who write papers and want to submit it may use AI for limited and supportive purposes to check grammar, enhance clarity, produce simple visual materials, but cannot do it to produce entire manuscripts. We know that people do it already. Students use AI to produce entire manuscripts. We know because some of the students have told us they do it. Some of them don't tell us they do it because the problem is, and just to make it clear, we cannot detect whether something was written by AI or not really reliably. We might think we can, but it's very difficult. So there's research on whether you can detect whether a student used AI fully or not. You can almost not do that anymore. AI has become so powerful already that it is very, very difficult. And this tells us something about how we as faculties and as teachers should think about AI and students. If we already cannot detect whether it was written by AI or a student, we cannot also ask, if students say, well, I didn't write it, but they did, we should trust their word because we cannot see anymore whether it was AI or not. So powerful, it's already so powerful. But that's why policy is needed. We should train our students and our staff how to use AI in the writing process. For me personally, I've not used AI for the writing actually. Maybe because I think I can write clear, maybe. But also, I just don't want to outsource my own thing yet for making more beautiful sentences. Also because this is a personal touch. I like to experiment with new words and new ways of sentencing and writing. I like to write. So I don't want someone else doing my writing. I like to write myself. But others might have more difficulties. I know one of my Chinese colleagues said that AI actually can help Chinese researchers to get their work published more easily because they sometimes have difficulties in clear English writing. They do write a manuscript and then have AI help them with the grammar and improve it. And I think, well, that's why not? If that's a way to do so, why not? Same with you. Okay, well, maybe you could be. Not for you, Davey, right? You're very clear. So, but if you do it, many journals already have AI policies, right? So that you need to tell that your text was reviewed and refined maybe using ChatGPT. Who is using AI already now in their work? Yeah, I think most, yeah. And I think, yeah, okay. And also for other, apart from writing, for what do you use AI? Yeah. Sorry? Brainstorming, good, yeah.
To also check the logic of the writing.
Yeah.
Sometimes the flow doesn't really flow
Exactly.
well, and you know there's something wrong, but you don't know exactly what it was.
Exactly. Yeah, no, these are very good things you can use AI with. Another thing is that I once, maybe a couple of months ago, I was writing proposal for funding, huge funding, almost €1 million. It's a lot. So I wrote it, rewrote it. I asked my colleagues to look at it, and then I thought, you know what? I will ask AI to act as a reviewer of this manuscript, of this proposal. I gave AI the rubric, the evaluation criteria of the funding agency. Well, you reviewer, these are the criteria that you need to use, because these are used by the real reviewers. Please look at my proposal. And it came up with some really good comments. I thought, damn, I didn't notice it. And I put some of them in. I thought, wow, these are very good comments and very good feedback. But all original stuff was all by me, but I wanted to have some extra feedback. And some of these comments were not raised by my colleague. They didn't see it because perhaps they didn't look at the evaluation criteria that critically maybe as AI. So you could really use, but it is of course also part of your culture in your lab, your culture in your faculty. So is there a general policy in your faculty on AI? Yeah. And is it somewhere that people can, I couldn't see it, I couldn't find it.
There's one, so it's relatively new. There's something which, especially for the final thesis, so for the bachelor's dissertation, also for master thesis, there's a general rule from the university on how to use AI. Something like what the social media.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I think part of what I'm talking to you about now is, of course, based on my personal perspective in a lab. And I want to ask Nuno some questions. Nuno was also in Davy's lab, but also in my lab. And each lab has maybe his or her own vision on how the lab should look. And in some labs there's a huge hierarchy, in some labs there was no hierarchy, some labs people are very open, some labs a little bit more rigid. But it's good to also here reflect on what you think a good working lab should look like. I'm not sure, not because I'm here, I can go out of the room if you want to talk honestly, but maybe you can give some things about what you noticed in how we as a group talk about all of these things. And yeah, maybe it's difficult, but be as honest as possible. Yeah. It's hard. I know it's hard. I can go out of the room. Yeah. In general, but yeah.
Yeah. So Henry is my main supervisor, my main promoter, and I already worked with Henry already 6.5 years and haven't finished yet. I hope this year they have finished.
Yes.
Okay. So in our lab in Master University and also KU Leuven, Belgium, I think it's not really hierarchical structure. Like Henry and I actually supervisor and also the students, but when I'm talking about the research, we are the same, like we are colleagues, so I can also criticize Henry and also Henry, of course, criticize my paper, my works, but it's like giving some suggestions, some commands, some others like revision for idea, for papers and for the others, but I can also sometimes give my opinion, etc. That's in that hierarchical aspect. I think about and also for the idea, like Henry already told that actually I by myself create my proposal, and Henry giving some comments, some ideas, and then I don't have to follow what Henry's proposal, so I have to develop my own. But in the middle of the dissertation processes, like I have some studies, and then actually in the proposal, if this works, and then I will continue with the second study, and then if it works, I will continue with this third, with the fourth. But unfortunately, at the first one, it's not significant yet. So we think about what will we did with the study, because if it's not significant, previously actually I'm also the same, like maybe a majority of us, that if it's not significant, it's not really important to publish. But Henry again pushed me to. That's still the result. So we discuss about how to writing the paper, because we also using pre-registration and open science. So we already published that this is our hypothesis, and then when we found that there's no significant result, we put some. We also put some exploratory analysis results, and then we explain why it's not significant. And fortunately, it's also now already published. So non-significant results also could be published in the really good papers. And I have like a 5-6 study, 2 or 3 of it not significant. So yeah, that's about the non-significant result paper. So it's still possible for publishing non-significant result to the international journal, I think. Yeah, that's what's that. Should I? Oh, how many chapters? So actually, yeah, the same like already Henry already told. In our university in Masih, Tari and I in Masih University, but different supervisors. Actually, from the university, there's no policy that we have to publish. We have so there's no minimum publication. So the publication it's between me and also my supervisor, with my supervisor, and then we discuss how many chapters will be published in our dissertation. And if it's because we also have colleague that he didn't have any published article, and it's still possible. But in my cases, we discuss together, and then because of the timeline, we try to, for example, we try to publish this first, and then continue with the next, and etc. And for my dissertation, I have like 6 or 7 publication. 2, 3 already published. The other still got rejection, and then 2 of it still under review, and then now I'm working with the general introduction and general discussion. Any comments? It doesn't mean that you have to spend 6 hours. 6 years. This is almost my 7 years. 3 years
Good to share everything.
Yeah, actually, my previous proposal is to develop the new tools to differentiate between false to checking the reliability of the statements of victims or hypotheses, and then we want to develop the new tools. But before we develop the new tools, we want to make like the exploratory study about the tools that already been used in the legal area. So we check the for example, the psychometric properties of the tools. We also checking about the biases of that tools, but fortunately or unfortunately, the result is that the tools is already without, for example, not susceptible for the biases, and then the psychometric properties also not really good, but also there are some evidence that the tools can be used in specific settings. So we like change the idea about developing a new tools, but we check the tools that already been used. So we check how strong the tools that we use in the forensic and legal setting, why they use it. Like actually, when Henry talking about direct application, two of my study actually direct application. So it's already been published in European and also US participants, but we want to know here in Indonesia. That's the first one, and also we also taking other participants in Belgium and also Netherlands, and then want to compare the result, and then some studies conducted in the expert participants, like the expert eyewitnesses, like the real psychologists, but how if the studies conducted in the students, so like in the psychology and also law student, is there's still the same effect or not. So we also replicate the same, but with the different cases and also with the different methods, because when I conducted the study, it's cafe, so we couldn't conducted the real training, but we did training with the online application, etc. So it's we conducted the direct application, and in another study we also conducted like the conceptual application, and so we conduct application, the study with the new idea, and also we sometimes found that the result not always significant, but that's okay. We still can publish it, and also yeah, that's still the result. And if you ask why I conducted many studies, because there are changes in the way when I want to finishing my dissertation, and then this maybe it's happened because maybe this insignificant result happens because of this or the other way. So we try to explore other idea, and then we want to check and also want to testing the result, and also we found other studies, that the new studies from other authors, and then maybe it will be interesting if we replicate here, and then we just conducted this study.
Thank you. Yeah.
The point I want to add from what Mbak said is typically we are used to think that the topic, the study should be complex, right?
Oh yeah.
What I should be complex.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But what I learned from Henry is when I supervise and study together, having research together with Henry, a simple ideas can be done in PhD level. For example, for Mbak and for another one is for Diandra. The first stage is she's doing the scoping review in how to she's studying about the interviewing practices among police officers related to traffic accidents. So in the first stage is she's doing the scoping review to know how many studies has already conducted related to the interview method. And then the second one, he tried to know in the real world what is the common practices in Indonesian police, what kind of interview method that they already use. He conduct a focus group discussion and also distribute the survey, and based on that result, she can write 2 papers. So what I want to say to you that it's okay in every step that any kind of data that you have, you can start to write the paper. You don't have to wait until all the study has been finished yet, but you can start with the small idea, the simple idea, and just write it down. And it's okay. And it can publish in the international journal. As long as what Henry repeatedly said, the method should be good and sound. Thank you, Henry.
Well, thank you, and So maybe as the last slide, maybe some comments from you to me, some feedback. You can say maybe you missed something, that's good to know, or maybe you think, well, this maybe has made me think about some aspects. Feel free to criticize or agree or not agree, perfectly okay. But just to know a little bit about this session today and whether or not it make you think about this process. Again, doesn't mean that you need to change everything fully, but at least make you aware of some of the aspects in our field that might make our method a little bit stronger. Who wants to say something? You don't have to. It's an open discussion. Feel free, but it helps me as well, right? So, like David also knew, it's not because I'm standing here that I am right? I can be wrong, and it's fully okay to talk about what your reflection is of today. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe I want to add something. I have also an experience in which I became a reviewer, and then the journal explicitly said that even though we are a review, we cannot upload the article to AI. So then, during that experience, I asked AI, so what is ethically is, how do we use AI ethically in academics or in communications? And then there are some things that I thought that it's even more strict than what I knew, is that when using AI, even ChatGPT suggests that if it's not published, then please be careful and then set your ChatGPT or AI or something so that your paragraph does not become a kind of like a training feed for the AI. So it needs to be off, set off. And then even then, ChatGPT said that even then you also need to be careful so that your variable needs to be kind of like changed or something. So instead of mentioning variables, you can ask if I have this X variables and then say I want to quote something. If I have this X variable and then Y variable and then I want to make it moderator or something, can you give me quotes in R or something? So even ChatGPT said if you really want to be strict, then even your variable, even though it's not trained, you need to also kind of like analyze it or something. So I mean, I don't know how it is. It may be just some kind of like a reflection for me. How far should we go for, and then be careful for AI, and then at which part you also mentioned, at which part should I be kind of like ask more for AI as a sparring partner, and which part should I not? Like, I know some colleagues of mine, they upload the entire document to ask them to check for grammars, but can we also do that, or should we use some kind of like another AI who is more private or locally in a kind of like a local draft or something like that? It's just my question.
Yeah, good point. Some universities now, because of that, some of the AIs, they of course, if you upload stuff, they might use it for their own training. And it might be the case that you don't want to have that, but also from university, you're not allowed. Some things might be uploaded, not that big of a problem, but some things you don't want to have being trained or being stored in some sort of cloud. That's why some universities are now trying to develop their own AI, right? In which you can securely exactly secure the data. I'm not sure if that's being done here at UPI, but I'm sure this will happen by the way. That universities will develop their own AI that people can even more safely use, right? Because the problem, I think, with many of these open source AIs, that open source means is that everything that you upload will be available for that AI, that company as well to use. And maybe some of the stuff that you upload might be very sensitive. So it is important to think about this critically. For us, it's very important, especially, I will never upload manuscripts to AI, research proposals or funding proposals. I don't care because maybe I have a very bad idea, so you can upload, that's okay, but sensitive stuff like the student thesis or your own manuscript, I would be very careful on that. We are also often involved in legal cases as an expert witness. I will never upload any legal reports or non-anonymized stuff. certainly many still do, and as long as there is no policy, real clear policy on it, it's difficult to know what you can or what you cannot do. That's about the ethical use of AI. Many of us are still experimenting with it. That's perfectly okay, but you need to ask these questions as well. What do I want to have AI do with my work? And can I trust the companies behind AI to safely use my data? And I don't know. I don't know. And if I say I don't know, I'm more reluctant to upload stuff on it, right? So, other reflections?
From the back side?
Anything that you want to share about today?
For me personally, I've already completed my data collection, and every step of the way, I often pray that my method gets bigger, because it means that this time I have to publish my research, so I only can pray because the data is already there.
Of course, yeah.
And maybe what my question is, what should we do with the data that we've already collected?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how to say the result as it is, and be responsible of the result, and how should we prepare for the reviewer then?
Yeah.
Because of what we do in that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's about, let's say you already have data, or maybe data from someone else, or what else, so you don't have any control anymore on the method anymore, right? I mean, unless you now realize that the method is fully flawed, and then you might decide not doing anything with the data, that's sometimes possible, but unless that's not the case, then of course, you can still use the data with, of course, maybe the remark that in your paper, an important section of your paper is first limitation sections. We know about these limitation sections, very important to write, but also sections, and I don't have the time today to talk about it more, which is called, for example, constraints on generalizability, constraints. So devoting a section on that, what can we tell based on the data that we have, and what can we not tell based on the data. Let's say now you see that perhaps in hindsight you should have collected more data, but you cannot do so anymore. So you can say that at least with these data, this is what I can say, this is what I cannot say. It's still up to the reviewers to decide whether or not that's a strong argument, but it could be a strong argument. It's an honest argument. Yeah? You're not overselling your own data. Because of some of the things you don't have control. To give an example, one of my PhD students, she works at the police, and she has data that was already collected from police files. She didn't have any control anymore about the methodology. And these are very sensitive data, no control about how the data was collected. But the data can still be used. But, of course, with the remarks in the paper, what the data can tell us and what the data cannot tell us. And that is appropriate to think about for yourself. Okay, what can I now really say? If you look critically, maybe your method is very good, nothing wrong with it. But if you do see some points that might be improved, you have to decide, are these really fatal stuff? Because it's very seldom the case that our studies are perfect. You can criticize all studies if you want. Maybe the analysis should have been better, maybe more participants, maybe materials. So you should also be careful not to be overcritical of your own work, right? We do the best that we can. And that doesn't mean that our results don't mean anything. It also doesn't mean our results are perfect. That's perfectly okay. So that's something that you critically need to self-reflect. What was my methodology, knowing all of the stuff that I know now? Do I still think it makes sense to publish this? If it does, do. No problem. And if there are some limitations, also okay. Of course, if there are some really fatal issues, that can be difficult. For example, one of my colleagues, who is an experienced researcher, he presented his research, and he had two experiments, which was about politicians who spread fake news. And of course, Donald Trump was one of the statements that they looked at. And then he had two studies, and he wanted to submit it, or they already submitted it, I'm not sure. But in the second study, he said, can you see what we forgot to do? And only in hindsight, they realized, what did they forgot to do in that study? They forgot a control group in that study. And he said, how is that possible? Me, as an experimental, experienced researcher, forgot to add a control group in my own study. But we have the data, we have, I'm going to do something with it, and we will see what the reviewer will say. He made an argument why maybe it was not a big of a problem for this study, but it could be, for example, sometimes, right? So I would be critical, not to be overcritical, of course, right? Most of us will do our research with the best intentions, want to do the best as we can, and we should also be confident that what we have is something that we can really do something with, to try to publish it, of course, if we want to do so. So that's what I surely should try, that you should try. Other things? Anything that you want to add, ask?
I think it's quite enough for me.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much for your attention. Yeah.